The James Webb Space Telescope was specifically designed to see the first stars and galaxies that were formed in the universe. So we're going to see the snapshot of when stars started, when galaxies started, the very first moments of the universe. And my bet, there's going to be some big surprises.
The Interplanetary Podcast. The exploration of space for the benefit of all humankind. Your hosts in England and the Netherlands, Matthew, Russell and Julio Aprea.
Oh yeah, baby. John
Grunsfeld.
All right.
Hello, Matt.
Oh, hi, Julio. How are you?
Good. It feels like it has been yesterday, and it also feels like it has been forever since the last time
I know
we recorded.
I know. It's been very, very busy in Matt World. It's chaotic and busy, so you've got to bear with me, listeners.
Yeah. Last time we recorded, we had a marathon recording of multiple hours.
Exactly. So, and one of those interviews from that multiple hours is going to find its way into today's episode, Julio.
So, first, let's give some context, right? A few weeks ago, there was the ESA Open Day, which is an annual event, which is somehow how I ended up getting to know you, Matt, because I discovered your podcast where you did an episode when you visited with Jamie a few years ago, and you recorded a bunch of astronauts, right?
Yeah.
So this is an annual event, and this year, it was done again in 2 days, one with people present there, and the other one an online. So you and I recorded a series of interviews with different ESA experts. And today, we will be using some of those interviews. And today, specifically, we will be focusing on 2 interviews back-to-back that were focused on the James Webb. Because, let's face it, now that we're so close to that launch, there's a lot of content that we need to discuss about James Webb.
Yes, indeed.
The hype could not be bigger.
No. I must admit, Julio, I was very jealous because you seem to be able to see the pictures of James Webb in Guyana before anyone else, right?
Well, at the same time as my colleagues.
Well, yeah, but
the difference is that on a Friday at 11 p.m. I happen to be in my computer. So I like to think that at least on the European side, I was, I saw them right when they arrived, freshly arrived. But of course, I have colleagues working in Kourou, including the photographers that obviously saw them first. I don't like to claim first to anything.
I know you
first
love
or
records,
biggest. No.
But I have to say, you're undoubtedly the biggest and the best podcaster from Argentina who appears on a space podcast regularly. Is that enough? Is that specific enough, or maybe not even?
No, not. Well, I don't know in English-speaking ones, but there are some very good Spanish-speaking podcasts that I could not light a candle to.
Oh, what?
We have some very capable people out there.
No,
you have to stay humble, Matt. You have to stay humble.
True.
Anything you
Very
do,
true.
someone else will have done it first.
Yeah.
Anything you're good at, someone else will be better.
Yeah, well, it's like Neil Armstrong can't even claim to be the first person on the moon because Buzz was there with him as well.
There we go.
Yeah,
See?
I know you love that one.
Now you get it.
So, yes, James.
Yeah.
So, talking of James Webb, one of the sort of milestone moments was this week, wasn't it? Because without this Ariane 5 launch, VA255, it would be much delayed, correct? Am I right in saying that? Or it would probably be delayed if there was a problem with that launch?
There were no problems with this launch. Let's start with that.
There never is with an Ariane 5.
It's a highly reliable vehicle.
It certainly is.
But it's still a rocket, and it's one of the most reliable ones worldwide. Mm-hmm. But again, we're talking rockets here. Okay, let's always keep that in mind that we're talking rockets.
It's like a building with an explosion underneath it.
That's a way to put it. Mm-hmm. A round building with lots of propellant inside. When you stand next to one, those 60-something meters, really, when you have that perspective and you're standing under one of them, it's mind-blowing.
Well, thanks to you, Julio, I have stood underneath an Ariane 5. in the building while it's being built. It is absolutely epic.
It's humbling. It's incredible. And every time I get to go there and I see one and I'm in front of that, I'm very, very grateful of that opportunity. I know I'm quite privileged, and I wish everyone could see it. You know, quoting William Shatner, everyone should see this.
Oh God, yeah. I'm still so chuffed. I'm so chuffed that my favourite Canadian managed to get to space. At 90, he's the oldest person ever to go to space. That's going to take
Wait. So you're saying that Mike Myers went to space as well?
I do like Mike Myers, but still Shatner's my favourite. Do you know what? I have been having a Austin Powers renaissance recently. I've been watching the films.
Those are very good movies. I think in a way they are responsible for bringing back James Bond.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, let's. I tell you a few interesting bits about this flight, this Ariane 5 launch. As you said, yes, as we approach the very critical launch that the James Webb launch is, and every launch on Ariane 5 are critical. Every launch has very important clients. Okay, these are very important payloads, very important satellites that were launched. But you before going with a payload such as James Webb, you want to make sure that your previous couple of launches go without a hitch, right? And this is what we were really looking forward to have the flight 254 last July, and this one going, launching nominally. And yes, we had that. The two payloads, were deployed in the correct orbits. One of the payloads is a telecom satellite for SES, the telecommunications company. Their satellite is SES-17. And then the other one...
Wait. How did they come up with that name?
I assume some heavy brainstorming sessions and finally a consultancy company adding to it, yes.
Because wasn't it going to be called the SES Aprea at one point? And then they just decided to go with...
Stop it with these jokes. It's I appreciate simplicity in naming. Not everything needs to be called Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah, but presumably this thing did cost many hundreds of millions of dollars, right? So
yes,
doesn't it deserve a name better than 17?
First of all, I don't know if it has been christened with any other name internally. But when you're a successful telecommunications company like SES and you have a fleet of satellites flying around, I think it's good to have a standard naming structure for it. So you know exactly which one you're referring to, and you don't have to have a table like, oh, this is the
Aprea. It's number 17.
Well, it's number 17. No, you want to know it's 17. That's important information, right?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
Anyway, the other one, the satellite is called Syracuse 4A. So as you can imagine, there are other Syracuse's satellites previous to that.
Isn't this a military one?
This is a military one for the French Direction Générale de l'Armement.
Nice.
Which is, I'm not very familiar with the French governmental structure, but this would be Army General Direction, but I really don't...
It being English, it's taking every ounce of energy not to make a French military joke.
Anyway, the satellite itself, it's for providing secure communications between the armed forces and also, for instance, with operations with NATO and such. These are the type of satellites that, they have very increased security to make sure that those communications remain secret. Not that they can only be accessed by who needs to access it, and they are resilient to not being interfered.
Here's a question for you, Julio. You may or may not. I'm putting you on the spot here. But if you had a very early version of the Ariane 5, would it have been powerful enough to lift these two satellites into where they had to go? Or the kind of slow upgrades over the time that Ariane 5's been in service? Has that been capable of making it more capable? Because am I right in saying this is one of the heaviest payloads ever to geostationary orbit?
Yeah, you make a good point. Yes, indeed. indeed, the two payloads combined with the payload adapter and everything was the heaviest that an Ariane 5 carried to the geosynchronous transfer orbit. Obviously, Ariane 5 has launched heavier payloads than that. Just the ATV going to LEO, to low Earth orbit, was about 20 tons. So it's not the heaviest payload, but it was the heaviest to geosynchronous transfer orbit, which is an orbit that requires a lot more energy than to reach than LEO. The higher you go into the orbits, the more energy you need, and that's the less payload, the less performance you get, right? Mm-hmm. And yes, Ariane 5 is not the first Ariane 5 is not the same as this last Ariane 5. Over the years, many improvements have been made to the rocket, including sometimes complete changes in the upper stage. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was a new upper stage with the one we're using now with cryogenic fuel. But also there have been small incremental increase in performance. For instance, this particular launch, the VA255, sometimes you increase the performance not only with the mass that you launch, but also with the amount of volume that you can allow for the payloads. Mm-hmm. In this one, the volume of the fairing of the Ariane 5 was increased by attaching a 1.5 meters racing cylinder, so the fairing could accommodate these two satellites that were very, very large.
Oh, wow.
One. Yeah. But yes, this is one of the reasons as well that Ariane 5 launches a James Webb back in the day when it was selected. And I think even today it remains that Ariane 5 has one of the biggest volumes under the fairing. Of course, there are other launchers now in development that will have bigger fairings, bigger diameters, but currently in the market, this is it. Anyway, fun fact, because we increased this, we inserted this cylinder to increase the volume of the fairing, I hear from colleagues that this was the tallest Ariane 5 ever. Mm-hmm. And I say I hear from colleagues because, I'm always very, unless I can go and measure it myself.
When you make a rocket longer like that, presumably you have to do some kind of computer modeling and stuff like that to make sure that there's not going to be some weird.
Oh, for sure. This modification is not something that you just added the cylinder and you go. You do system checks and simulations, etc. Yes, this is the whole package. I mean, you just see that it's 1.5 meters taller and there is an increased volume, but there is a full qualification of that, right? It's not something that you just add the piece of hardware and you go.
Yeah.
Even things like the onboard cameras that we installed for the next flight for James Webb, they also have to go through a big review process. It's not just like you slap a GoPro and you go.
Yeah, because you could just get like 100-kilometer fairing, and then the satellite's already in space.
Now you're just being silly. and here I was thinking we were having this nice serious conversation.
No. But I was thinking, I was just taking it to an extreme.
Look, we had the two last launches. It was they were successful. Okay, the world was watching that this one would go well. Mm-hmm. I noticed during the night. This happened last weekend, by the way. We have to stay up most of the night, and I noticed there was a lot of attention online and a lot of expectations from a public that normally does not look towards Kourou or the European spaceport, right? A lot more American, US attention for this launch than previously.
Normal. Yeah. Than normal. Not surprisingly. Yeah. I mean, the James Webb telescope, when it flies, will be one of the greatest achievements of mankind, right? There's been that brilliant video, isn't there, of it unpacking and all the different things that it has to do to get out to its Lagrange point. Did you like those videos?
Yes.
Which one was your favorite, the ESA or the NASA one?
Well,
I
told you that. And that I told you that I watched the ESA one, mm-hmm. the one that shows the launch of with Ariane 5 and the full deployment, right? And when I saw the way that the Sunshield is deploying, it just gives me, as an engineer, it gives me nightmares. And then when I was already having nightmares, I watched the video from NASA of the 29 days on the edge, in which they explain that there are 100 and I don't remember now how many mechanisms that have to work correctly and on cue for that sun shield to deploy correctly. But at the same time, I love this. I love how good NASA, how transparent they are on the difficulties. They don't tell you, this is going to work. They tell you, this is difficult. And they make it clear to you before the launch, this is difficult. Do you remember the 7 minutes of terror to land on Mars?
Well, twice it's happened.
Yeah, but at least for the first time, they built such an expectation that the sky crane was so crazy a concept and so difficult that you were just expecting for it to fail. And then you start treating it as the moment it was successful, it's like you just won the World Cup or something.
Well,
because you had all this expectation building behind.
Well, Falcon Heavy was the same, wasn't it?
I see how they did it in this video. I mean, everyone must watch this video, the NASA video of the 29 days on the edge. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
it's brilliant. Anyway, well, maybe we should talk about James Webb a little bit. That's the only thing we have been talking about so far. But yeah, news on the launch side of James Webb. When was it? More than a week ago. I think it was almost 10 days ago. The James Webb arrived to Europe Spaceport in French Guiana. After it traveled from California, it went through the Panama Canal. It was keeping its. The James Webb did not navigate the waters. It was being transported in a boat, and the boat had its. I understand that they kept the transponders off during most of the trip to avoid pirates.
Oof.
That led to lots of online jokes about James Webb arriving, and then you open the container and you find.
Oh my God, Jack Sparrow!
That you find Jack Sparrow inside instead of the James Webb, and there were many jokes about the pirates. No, that was fun, and now it's sitting there in the clean room. Yeah, now it's being checked. They are running tests to make sure everything is in top shape for later the integration into the Ariane 5 and launching it into space.
Well, December. You laugh about the pirates thing, but the reason why America doesn't have the metric system is because when the kilogram and the meter and all that was being sent to them by boat, it was intercepted by pirates and they never received it. And so they kept the old imperial system.
You must be joking.
I'm not joking. I'm actually not joking. There is some truth to that story.
And they didn't bother to send another one?
Well, it's really expensive. Those the kilogram was like a ball of platinum. It's not cheap.
Was it almost like launching James Webb?
Yeah, I guess it's the scientific equivalent. Yeah, of like having your
back in that day.
In the day, yeah, and they were nicked by pirates, and that was it.
Wow, interesting. Here,
so yeah,
I learned something new today.
Yeah, I mean, it probably requires a bit of fact checking, but I think there's 80% truth to it. I like a bit like you, unless I really see the actual story. Yes, that's the story I've heard anyway, Julio. I haven't got time to check it, but the listeners can check it
with caveats. Yes,
with caveats.
If Matt got it wrong, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, and that's part of how this works.
Same if I got something wrong, please tell me.
So Julio, who are our guests? Because they're much more knowledgeable about both these things than we are.
Oh yes, indeed. Regarding we did this interview, 2 interviews back to back. The first one with Kate Underhill, who is a space propulsion engineer at ESA, and she's a veteran of the podcast. You have already interviewed her.
Indeed.
She joined us to describe in a way how the launch campaign for James Webb goes and how it launches into space and the different steps. and the environment the telescope goes through as it goes into space. Then when Kate, let's say, takes us to space, then we're joined by Sarah Kendrew, who is an instrument scientist for James Webb, the James Webb Space Telescope as well, where we talk more on the science side and the engineering of the space telescope itself, of the Webb itself. During this whole interview, we're also joined by Kai Nosk, and this is the first time I have to pronounce his last name, so I don't know if I'm doing it right. Kai Nosk. He will kill me if I get it wrong. He's the ESA Science Communications Officer. So when you see news about and related to the scientific missions of ESA and communication activities on the matter, he's the reference point for this. When you want to talk about not only space telescopes but also probes, the missions to Venus and such, it's a good one to ask.
I tell you what, I want all three back on the podcast again because they're all brilliant guests, aren't they?
And one by one.
Yeah, and one by one, a bit more time because this was a bit more time for each.
It was a sprint. It was a sprint because we had about 20 minutes per guest, and normally we used to like an hour and a half per guest.
Yeah.
So it was definitely shorter than usual.
Yeah, it was brutal podcasting at its best. Shall we?
It was almost live radio because we had an audience.
Yeah, we did have an audience.
We had a chat room. We had people asking questions, and I have to say it was stressful in some ways, but exciting.
I thought you were very good, Julio.
This format of the live shows.
Julio, shall we stop rabbiting on and go straight to the interview?
Écoutez.
The Interplanetary Podcast, putting the ace back into space.
Kate Underhill.
Hi Julio. Hi Matthew.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Another veteran of the show.
Yep.
Yeah, podcast 196, I believe.
Wow, you have a good memory, man.
You know them by heart. Wow.
Actually, I must admit, I put it into Google.
So Kate joined us. In the past, she's a propulsion engineer working at the ESA Space Transportation Directorate.
Rocket scientist
working on testing and breaking stuff.
That's how you learn.
Trying to break stuff, right?
Trying not to break stuff too much, a little bit,
but to learn from it.
Exactly.
Well, before we start, have you ever done that thing at a party or something where you ask someone their job and then you joke about it's not rocket science though, is it? And then tell them what you do.
No, I have that problem quite often at a hairdresser, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" And you're like, "I'm a rocket scientist." It's not a joke; it's actually true. And generally, they're not quite sure what to say after that.
Why did we end up saying rocket scientist instead of rocket engineer?
Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's engineering. It's not what I do is engineering, not science. But
nothing wrong with being an engineer, right?
No, it's applied science.
So, Kate, you're still working in the Future Launchers Preparation Program at ESA, I presume.
Yes.
Actually, I know, but
yeah, I haven't changed since Friday now.
You want to tell us a little bit of what you guys do there?
Yes, we prepare future launches. Sorry, hence the name.
So you are, in a way, inventing the future.
Yes, which is, I keep telling people it's really interesting. Like engineering is actually, and science is actually really creative. And this is where we can be creative because the future doesn't exist yet. So we have launches that work really well today that are getting things into space. Ariane 5, we're building Ariane 6. We have Vega and Vega C coming along, all launching from our launch base. But we can always do better. And I think it's also linking to what Franco Ongaro was saying earlier, doing things better, cheaper, quicker. And this is where the Future Launch Preparatory Program comes in, is where we try and spin in technologies that we see from other industries, from the automotive or for the aeronautical industry, and seeing if that can work for us. And then also really developing specific new engines, new materials for launches that can make our launches even better, have even better mission performance, even better versatility, and even cheaper.
But Kate, we have rocket engines. that are working perfectly fine, but you're working on new rocket engines.
Yes.
What do these bring to the table?
You can always do better. So you're completely right. The basic idea of how we get into space and the basic idea behind a rocket engine hasn't changed since the Russians first launched 60 years ago, and it's containing a large amount of a propulsion of a big flame, a big fire, and shooting out the right end of a nozzle. But what we can always do better is have a more efficient engine. So we can have engine designs where we really try and use up all the propellant in pushing the rocket forwards and not losing some in cooling or things like this. And also having more efficient materials. What is really coming in now, again, it's not the engine design, but it's new metals, specific metals, alloys. They're going to be lighter. 3D printing, which means that we can print parts. One example I always give is an injector head for an engine. The traditional part has about 200 different pieces. In one of my projects, we printed an injector head in one piece. So if you can imagine the kind of the speed that we could do that, the ease and the cost reduction, going from 200 individual pieces to one piece means that we can have cheaper engines, cheaper launches, and then the idea is then getting into space is cheaper for everybody. We get a more of a kind of open up the space economy to everybody.
In many ways, as Franco said, the most difficult part is to put things in space.
Yeah.
And
it's not easy.
Then
it is
really
rocket science getting
right?
up into orbit.
You mentioned three aspects. The first one, when you mentioned the 3D printing and manufacturing parts with less items in a way and making it cheaper, right?
Yeah.
Then you mentioned making them lighter. I guess we make them lighter because we want our rocket to be lighter. We want less mass. Right?
Yes, it's there's a variety of impacts, but very clearly the easiest one to say is on the upper stage. So Ariane 5, I'll take the example. We have two solid boosters. We have a first stage of hydrogen, oxygen, liquid propulsion, and an upper stage of hydrogen, oxygen, liquid propulsion. Every kilo that the upper stage is lighter is an extra kilo of satellite we can put into orbit. So the lighter our upper stage is, the bigger, the heavier the payloads we can put into orbit.
Right. So we want to make it lighter, we want to make it cheaper, and you mentioned as well to make it more efficient. That if I'm trying to get my head around it, and I always have a hard time with this, is basically we want to increase the mileage, right? To get more. Yeah. To get
go
more
further with propellant.
Per liter of propellant. Correct?
Yeah, and again, it's the idea of being able to send up a bigger satellite with the same amount of fuel, because we completely use that fuel for the mission and not wasting it, not using on cooling or other elements of the rocket.
Okay.
Is that a frustration with rocket engineering? Because I get frustrated by it. So I don't know whether it's someone actually in the profession does, where a lot of technology, like say, computer chips and solar panels and everything else like that is on a kind of Moore's law of it getting exponentially better all the time. Whereas rocket engineering seems to be this kind of slow incremental crawl. Is that frustrating?
It's no, I don't find it frustrating, but it's true as, again, the basics physics haven't changed at all. And even we talk about, SpaceX is very well known. They're still using the same ideas as we're using. The engines are very similar, but they're just doing really intelligent things in terms of efficient production processes and efficient choices of engine design. It's not frustrating because there's always something we can do to make it better. And because we're really at the kind of the fourth. What is really interesting is being at the forefront of kind of knowledge, materials knowledge, production knowledge. We're really pushing elements. I talk about the metals, the hydrogen turbo pump. I think of the first stage engine of Ariane 5 is going at 70,000 rotations per minute at 20 Kelvin, so minus 270 degrees Celsius. Getting metals that can survive that environment, and they're 20 centimeters away from the combustion, which is at 200 degrees Celsius. Finding a metal that can survive that environment is not easy. And we're really pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. And once we kind of get that, there's a really satisfying idea of we've pushed back, we've learned something, we've built something that didn't exist before. And then in the ideal world, then we can downflow that to more terrestrial applications.
But I see your point, Matt, because when you look at science fiction, many times the one thing they make magic of is the rocket engine and make it infinitely efficient, because it seems to be always the point there that to open the story for the rest of the book, right? Like the Expanse, for instance. I always think of the Expanse.
But you can understand it, can't you? Because you went from the Wright brothers to Apollo in the same year distance as it took from us from Apollo to now, and it's like we can't actually get to the moon right now. So you feel as though that you can see why I get this question a lot from friends and just general public is what's so hard about getting to the moon? We did it 50 years ago, and it sort of plays into that. It's just really difficult, isn't it?
It is really difficult, and again, it's we got to the moon through a huge amount of political will and a huge amount of money, and it's the money they spent on Apollo was amazing. There's data they got. They explored everything. They got really, really basic material, chemical data that we still use today because they spent so much money doing these basic research programs. That today we don't have the same kind of funding. We use this really basic data still to build up our projects. And Apollo, you can really through that I really understand kind of how much money they put onto this program. That's not the kind of money and political will we have now. So we're doing a huge amount with the budgets we have. But it is, I really do think we're coming into a kind of a new phase now with income as commercial space transportation from the US, but also lots of startups in the UK. Space is becoming really part of the economy. People are realizing how useful it is, how necessary it is for everyday life. Franco was talking about all the climate data we're getting from space. All this kind of Earth observation data is becoming part of everyday life. And for the moment, the only way we can get into space is through rockets. And so it's really becoming an important part of kind of the terrestrial economy.
There's a really interesting question that's just come in on the chat, and that's you were talking about like improvements on liquid rocket propulsion, but is that simultaneous with work on solids as well?
So I'll actually go back to the question about kind of our ecological impact. So kind of liquid propulsion, especially we talk about hydrogen, oxygen, the exhaust that comes out as water. So our ecological impact is pretty minimal. Solid propulsion, it's not quite so clean. There's chemicals, there's aluminium, there's plastic in there. So solid propulsion is used for Ariane 5 boosters. It's used for Vega. It's used for the next while we're using Ariane 5, Ariane 6 and Vega. But in a long-term vision, it's not something in terms of being green, being ecological, we see a future in 15, 20 years. So it's not something that we are developing more. We're looking into trying to make liquid propulsion as green, as efficient as possible, and then seeing if there is some kind of step change in the future. If there is a paradigm shift, if we can get air breathing propulsion working.
Now, I have to stop you guys. Every time we get Kate, we end up going into a rabbit hole of propulsion geekiness, goodness, which I love.
What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
Actually, absolutely wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Actually, Kate, you were working up to not long ago in a rocket engine called ETID, right?
Yeah.
And what was that one bringing to the picture? You mentioned 3D printing. There was also methane in that one testing?
We didn't do the methane testing, but we checked that we could use both hydrogen and methane as the fuel on that. So trying to see if we can get, again, one engine design that could work in two different fuels. Right. Again, having something really efficient. So we had the 3D printed injector head. We're also now continuing ETID, working on 3D printed combustion chamber. So again, taking an engine that had 400 parts and taking it down to 4 or 5. We also had things, James Bond, like laser igniters, having a really small laser ignition system, making something a lot smaller, a lot more efficient, and making it reignitable. A laser we can fire a number of times, so we can have this engine igniting hundreds of times in space if we want.
We're now going into the rabbit hole, but we invited you here today because you have a not so secret past in which you used to work. You used to work at Europe Spaceport back down in French Guiana in South America, right? You spent a few years there. And you were working on different launch campaigns, if I remember correctly. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it, because today we want to quiz you about the upcoming launch of the James Webb as well.
Yeah, that's going to be an amazing launch campaign. Kind of in good and bad way, that it's going to be an interesting one. I worked for the French company Ariane, who commercializes the European launches. So they have Ariane 5, they have Vega, and they also have the Soyuz, the Russian Soyuz that launches from French Guiana. And I was living in French Guiana working on launch operations. So it's literally building the rocket, kind of assembling nuts and bolts of the rocket, putting the satellites on top and doing the final countdown, making sure everything's ready, and then launching it, getting up into space.
So now we have actually, I see that there are many questions coming on the chat. I'm loving them, and we'll try to fit as many as we can in the time that we have allocated for each guest. But we know right now we have the James Webb is on a boat somewhere between California and French Guiana. We don't know exactly.
No details given, exactly.
We do know, we're just not telling, right? So.
I'm finding that stressful. That it's on a boat, let alone a rocket.
It's on a boat. So once it arrives to the spaceport, right?
Yes.
And on the one side, we have the James Webb arriving in its container and all the ground support equipment, which part of it, I assume, already arrived, and all the people that will work on this launch campaign. And as you said before, on the other side, you have the team preparing the rocket that will launch it. How do those things work in parallel? What goes on there?
How it works is a lot of planning and a lot of experience and a lot of preparation. I was working in the launch base 10 years ago, and we were already discussing some of the operations. Because James Webb is such a specific satellite, we were already identifying the access we needed in terms of the building heights. The Ariane 5 assembly building has actually movable platforms at the top to be able to access specific points on each satellite. And then we were looking really into James Webb because it's completely different from what we've done before, making sure we could get the right access to the right parts of the satellite once we've done the integration. What I really love about launch campaigns is this huge mix. It's such we have this high-tech, $9 billion satellite arriving. It's arriving on a boat. It's going to go up the Karoo River that has been specially dredged so that the boat can actually fit up the Karoo River. It's going to have to be careful of the tides. You have to go at the right high tide, otherwise your boat's going to get stuck in the river. It's this just mix of high tech and pure practicality that get everything working.
I can see Matt pulling his hair.
And there are people, there are tide tables that they've calculated to make sure, and there has to wait at the Île de Salut, which are the islands, the old jail islands just outside of Karoo. The boat has to wait there for the high tide to be able to come up the river. We have, tide tables to make sure it's coming in at the right time. Then pick it up, drive it extremely slowly to the launch base where we have prepared all the satellite preparation facilities. And again, this has been years in the planning. We have Ariane 5 launch campaign for the launcher itself is standard. How you build the launcher up is relatively standard, although there are specificities, there's specific elements for each launch campaign, especially for Webb. We've had to modify the rocket slightly. On one side, you have the rocket being assembled by the launch teams, and then the other side, you have the satellite preparation. Once it's arrived in French Guiana, they have to do a lot of, it's not in bits, but it's not finally assembled. They have to assemble it. We have to do checkouts. You have to make sure that it's arrived, it's in good health, it's going to work. And then we have something called the POC, le Plan des Opérations Combinées, so combined operations. And there's the day that the satellite gets attached to what we call is a satellite adapter, which is a part of a launcher. When the satellite meets the first part of the launcher, then we're in this combined operations. And it's when we start working on the satellite and the launcher together. We start putting the satellite on its adapter, then we bring the satellite up to the assembly building, and we put the satellite on the launcher, we put the fairing on top, we do all the checkouts, making sure they're talking to each other properly, making sure the launcher's okay, making sure the satellite's okay. Then we make sure everything's fine and we roll it out and launch.
I am trying to show how snug it fits inside that fairing.
It's a very snug fit. So as I think Franco was saying that this is a huge mirror that's going into space. It's had to be folded up. I mean, Ariane 5 has one of the biggest available volumes for satellites is 5.4 diameter fairing. It's a big space, but we still got to fold up James Webb. So James Webb has to be folded up origami style to fit in correctly. We've had to make modifications in the fairing. James Webb is very sensitive about depressurization. So obviously we start at ground level. We've got 1 bar of pressure. Very quickly we're up in space with 0 bar of pressure. We've added extra venting holes in the fairing to make sure that the pressurization is very smooth. So James Webb is happy with that. We've got extra batteries on the upper stage to make sure that the maneuvers of the upper stage, once it's separated, are not going to interfere with James Webb. And we've got special maneuvers once we're up in space. This is one of my favorite terms as well. We've got barbecue maneuver. We're rolling the rocket in a way that the satellite is kind of heated equally all over, and there's not one side that gets more sun than the other.
Oh, surely that's the rotisserie maneuver.
If you're French, yeah.
I'm just trying to picture. We have the Ariane 5 here, right? Okay, I want Kate, if you can describe step by step how a rocket launch happens. In particular, this one. If you can, you already mentioned the barbecue maneuver at the end.
Yeah, where do I start? Okay, let's say
Make
we've
us
assembled
live through it before it happens. Matt, by the way, before you join us, Matt already did the countdown in French. He did it perfectly.
Yeah.
With the top and Allumage Vulcan and everything.
I forgot that bit. You did that bit for me.
Although, yeah, it's specific for Ariane 5. So we've got the satellite on the launcher. We've put the fairing on top. We've checked it out. Like I say, everything is talking to each other properly. Everything is connected in. The satellite is connected into the electricity supply of the launcher to make sure that it's kind of to make sure they're talking and make sure that we can communicate with both the satellite and the launcher. One of the last things we do on the launcher, in fact, is arm it. We have pyrotechnical devices for all the separations when we separate the boosters, when we separate the stages. We obviously put them in last. So we finish all our operations. We send in the team doing the pyrotechnical devices. They're put in the launcher. And then we have a review to confirm that the launcher is ready. And then we take the launcher out to the launch pad. So it's in an assembly building, what we call the BAF, and then it is rolled out onto the launch pad. The launcher is on in what we call a launch table, which is on wheels, and we have a rail track. It's actually pulled out by a truck. It's hard to believe, but there is actually a truck that pulls this.
Like 16 gears or something.
40 gears.
40. Wow.
And there's 3 people in the world that can drive it. It's very, very specific truck. It's not any truck. But it is a truck, just a truck-sized truck that pulls out the launcher plus the launch table, plus there's a little train behind it that's got all the electricity and the air and the dry air we need during the transit from one building to the launch pad. So we take it out. This takes a whole day. Obviously, we're going very slowly. Ariane 5 is not attached. It just sits on its launch table by the boosters, by its solid boosters are sitting down. There's no attachment in any way. So we are going very slowly. It's very flat.
What happens if there is a strong wind?
We can't go out if it's strong winds.
Okay.
We can't go out if there is lightning risk, and we can't go out if there's strong winds. And it's a bit like a launch. We have very strict criteria for when the launcher is outside of a building, in fact. And we also have the French Foreign Legion are on the launch base. As soon as the launcher is visible, so as soon as the doors of the building are open, then we have the French Foreign Legion protecting the launch base, because obviously security is a big and important issue, and even more so for James Webb. It's very controlled who has access to the launcher and who has visibility on the launcher. So we take it out onto the launch pad. We do all the connections. Again, all this fuel connections, all the air connections. The satellite is constantly having dry, cold air within the fairing, because electronics don't like the 100% humidity atmosphere of French Guiana. So we keep the satellites and the launcher itself nice and clean and dry. We connect everything up, and then we start what we call the final countdown. And these are the final operations that we do at a distance. We're in the control room, a couple of kilometers away from the launch pad, and we are at our computers making the orders for the final operations. And this is pressurizing the tanks, filling the tanks of fuel, because all those solid boosters are already filled with their fuel. The liquid main stage and the upper stage are not full of fuel. Filling them, pressurizing them, switching all the electronics on, making sure the electronics are happy. And then we do that. That takes generally about 12 hours for the final countdown. We time it so that we have a half an hour that we are completely ready, at least half an hour before launch. That is to say, we make sure that every single system is ready at least half an hour before launch, so that we have a little bit of margin. A lot of launches, we have launch window. We can actually have an hour and a half to launch, and we can launch any time within that specific hour and a half. For launches like James Webb, you have to launch, precisely. Certain launches you have to launch at the second, on the right second. Otherwise, we have to wait for another day. So we get everything ready at least half an hour beforehand. We make sure we're ready, and then we wait. We make sure everything's green. Again, that the weather is okay, that the satellite is okay, that the launcher is okay, that the tracking stations are okay. I've had that problem before. Everything was all right, but one of the tracking stations in Africa went offline. And we can't launch without the tracking stations, making sure that we've got the full visibility of the launcher throughout the whole trajectory. Everything across the world has to be ready, has to be connected. And then when the time comes, it's at 7 minutes before liftoff is when the automated sequence starts. And in fact, we don't do anything anymore. We just make sure the launcher counts itself down and gets itself ready for liftoff.
And while this automatic countdown starts, let me mention that we have a surprise guest, Kai Nosk. He's the communications officer for the Science Directorate here, who is also working on the web. You just missed the launch campaign of the James Webb. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, but you can join us. You are exactly about to launch it. Exactly about to launch. And I see that Sarah, our next guest, is also already joined. So Sarah, if you want to turn on your camera and join us at any moment, feel free to do so. And now I guess we go to this final countdown, Kate.
Yes, 10. So you have, we're watching very carefully the final countdown from 7 minutes. It's automatic, but we have all the information on our screens. We're making sure that things are happening properly. The automatic countdown is programmed. There are very specific criteria. Again, it's final pressurization, final filling, switching batteries on. If anything is not correct, then the launch will stop and put itself back in a safe mode. So we are always making sure the data coming through is correct. We hope everything is right. Then we get to the last minute, then we get to the last 10 seconds. We do the French countdown. 10, 9, down to 0. And Ariane 5 is a little bit special on this. Is at 0 is when the Vulcan engine ignites, but the launcher doesn't lift off. The Vulcan engine by itself is not enough to launch the rocket. We have the Vulcan engine, we ignite it, and we make sure it's working properly. So again, we check the parameters of the engine. Yeah, it's looking good. And then 7 seconds later, if it's looking good, then we ignite the solid boosters, and that's when the launch takes off.
And by this point, everything is automatic, as you said. If these 7 seconds, there is some anomaly with the engine and it shuts down, it's all automatic. There is not one person there with a button, let's say. Okay.
Exactly. It's all automatic. We've had the case before. We've ignited Vulcan. There's something that we weren't happy. The program wasn't happy with. It switched Vulcan off, and the launch countdown was stopped. And automatically, it puts itself back into a safe mode, waiting for us to check what happened and see what the next steps would be.
Exactly. In the meantime, just as we are about to hand over from the launcher to the mission itself, to the James Webb, we're joined here by our colleagues from science. Kate, as you maybe now there is this ignition of the solid boosters and liftoff. What happens then?
So it makes a lot of noise and a lot of light. This is my favorite discussion with anybody who watches a launch. Actual launches, is it the light that's more impressive or the sound that's more impressive? And there's no right answer. It's just incredible. Especially Ariane 5, it goes up really fast, goes up straight to go up over. We have launch towers, we have lightning rods to make sure it doesn't get hit, so it has to go up straight. Then it rolls over into what we call a gravity turn. There's a specific reason we don't want to lose energy because of gravity, and it flies up following its trajectory. After 2 minutes, so the boosters have over 240 tons of solid propellant in them. After 2 minutes, we've burnt all of it. It's all gone. We drop the boosters. We don't need them anymore. After 3 minutes, we're already high enough that we don't need the fairing anymore because there's not enough atmosphere. So as you understand with the rockets, as soon as we don't need a mass, we drop it. After 3 minutes, we've dropped the fairing. The satellite is out in the open. After 9 minutes, we've burnt all the propellant in the main stage. So the Vulcan will stop, and we separate the main stage from the upper stage. Then we have ignition of the upper stage that will do the line, kind of really get the precision insertion, what we call orbital insertion for the payload. So that goes up until 27 minutes, and then we have separation of the satellite. We set the satellite off. So for James Webb, it's going to go into an L2 transfer orbit. So
what does L2 stand for?
L2 is a Lagrange position, which is a very specific kind of gravity position between the Earth and the Sun's gravitational connections. It's a relatively stable orbit behind the Earth, so it's easier for the satellite to stay in that place, and we're away from the Earth kind of interference of the atmosphere and noise coming and the heat coming from Earth.
So thank you, Kate. And so now we are in this place. You mentioned already the payload separation, right?
Yeah. Okay. Payload separation. We send the payload on its way, and then the upper stage does a few maneuvers to get itself out of the way and make sure that we're not going to interfere with the upper stage, and also make sure that we put ourselves in what we call a safe orbit, that we're not going to interfere with any other
and the payload
satellites.
Is quite the payload this time. It's quite the payload we have here on the desk.
Yeah, it's on its own, and that's when it will start being able to deploy the mirror. What's very important is also the kind of the panels, solar panels, getting the energy, and that's where we'll start, sending signals back saying, yeah, I'm okay, I've survived the launch, I've started my deployment sequence, and I'm on my way to my final orbit.
And here is where we have to introduce our colleagues from the science directorate, because they are the ones in charge of this baby, right? So far we have been shaking the baby, shooting it into space, hoping it doesn't get hit by lightning.
We've delivered it. It's on its way. Now it's on its own.
Now it's their business.
Now it's yours. Yeah.
So we have here Kai and Sarah. Kai has been huge around here, and it was very nice of you to come and join us. I asked him especially to come and join me here today. I prefer to have someone sitting next to me and be able to bounce with and talk to. So thank you, Kai, for your availability on a Sunday. Can you believe that? Welcome.
It's never really a weekend, right? So at some point,
And we have Sarah Kendrew joining us from the Space Telescope Institute in Baltimore. My cheat sheet is gone, so I'm trying to do things by memory. You're an astronomer, right?
Yeah, astronomy and instrument builder. Yep.
Welcome.
Thank you.
If I remember correctly, you're working specifically on the MIRI instrument, but you're also working on the.
That's correct.
You're also working on the mission operations, or.
Yeah, specifically for the science
operations.
instrument, so almost entirely on MIRI. Yeah.
So I will ask you both now. You just were left in space by the Ariane 5. You're in your trajectory to your final destination.
this is what you look like, except you're still in your egg in the fairing. And once you're out, you still look like that. And you have to become that.
That, exactly. Or what we can see behind you, Sarah. I think you are in the... just like Kate is in the International Space Station, you're standing right in front of the James Webb. As it's on the boat, I assume. You're on the boat
yeah,
right
that's
now.
correct.
That's a very good internet
just
connection for a
out
boat.
in the clean room. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's in this folded configuration, right? And it's going to be slowly opening. I don't know who wants to. Maybe Sarah, you can tell us first. I understand first you have the solar panels getting deployed. Is this correct?
So it's we have a very fine timeline. As Kate already, just kind of following on from Kate's story, it's a very kind of tightly choreographed sequence of events, and it, in reality, for once we're in space, once the telescope is traveling out to L2 and gets to its orbit, that finely choreographed kind of dance takes a long time. So it's many months that we have a very, fine timeline of all the events that take place before we are ready to do science. So yeah, in that first period, we have the whole deployment sequence. And I have to confess, I need notes to keep, to really know exactly what the sequence of events is. As an expert on the science instruments, we mainly focus in my job on the actual activities with the instruments, which come quite a lot later, because obviously we don't start using the instruments until the telescope is fully open and deployed. But there are numerous components that all have to be deployed. So we have, as you said, we have kind of solar arrays, we have communications devices. And all these kinds of things that are tightly folded up in together to fit into the Ariane 5. The big items that have to unfold are the sun shield. So in Kai's beautiful model there that you can see, it has this kind of shiny diamond-shaped structure that sits underneath the telescope. So that is a large sun shield. So that is actually the size of a tennis court. So that's an enormous structure. And it consists of, I believe, 5 layers of extremely thin material that are kind of tightly rolled up together during launch. And so that deployment sequence is this kind of very slow and controlled unrolling of the sun shields. And then the layers have to be separated out and kind of tensioned in the correct way. And so that's a major part of the deployment. The other huge components are obviously the mirrors. So the primary mirror has these kind of wings folded in. So these have to be slowly and very carefully folded out to form one nice continuous mirror. And then you also get the structure that holds the secondary mirror. So you can see in the model, you can see these struts coming out from the primary mirror, and they hold another mirror which is the secondary of the telescope. In the background behind me, you can actually see this kind of folded up vertically, that kind of strut structure, just kind of.
So the light
fold out,
or the signals would come into this primary mirror, as you said, and they would focus on the secondary one that extends in the front.
Correct. Yes, and then from the secondary mirror, the light gets sent into basically the instrument module, which is mounted on the back of the mirror. So here is the front of the mirror, you can see, and on the back of it is a kind of is a module that all the science instruments are kind of mounted on. So if I'm just lean to the side, the light will go into this structure here, and right behind that, then it gets separated out to the different instruments and all the other hardware that's needed to keep the telescope, like pointed and on target.
So we just went from the fully, let's say, folded telescope to its full deployment. All this time is going along its way to its final destination in the L2 point, correct?
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, and all along this way, at the beginning, like with any satellite, you have let's say a commissioning phase. How do you call it? For the name, commission phase, to check that everything's healthy, as you mentioned, Sarah. I understand that once you get to your point, you don't immediately start doing science, right? You first have to calibrate it.
That's right. I mean, if I can, you're actually arriving at the L2 point, at the Lagrange point 2, where it will, in a stable orbit, follow around Earth, roughly when it's ready deployed. And the deployment will take between 3 and 4 weeks. They want to take their time. Everything is very well orchestrated. Everything is planned. But we are sure that it will definitely arrive after about 29 days at the L2 point, and this will roughly be the time that it takes to deploy the whole telescope. And then the actual commissioning will begin. They will turn on the instruments. They will have to align. Thank you. If you can adjust this a bit. Thank you. They have to align the mirror segments. Each of these 18 mirror segments has actuators, so they need to put it in the exact right position, angle, to make sure that you have a perfect mirror surface, and get everything else started up, get everything else tested with engineering exposures, where you first start taking images of relatively simple objects like stars that you understand very well, to understand the performance of your instruments, to get everything adjusted, and to monitor really every single parameter of this really complex instrument. Every bit of temperature, every bit of movement, everything is being recorded. And this is a very thorough process in almost all spacecraft. This takes a few months.
Yeah, so all this process of calibration, right? And then you said it's a few months. And then is the event happens. This is when I keep seeing you guys call it first light, right, Sarah? First light when the first light is already when you're doing science, or is it already still in the calibration period?
So as instruments become kind of available for science, so every instrument will go through its sequence of checkouts and calibration observations. Like we will be doing some observations along the way, but these will then also require time to get processed and everything. So it's not that we'll just sort of take a picture of something and put it on the internet. So there will always be like a bit of time associated with that. But I mean, yes, as part of our commissioning activities, we do look at at stars and things like that. So we will be getting a lot of kind of first look images.
Okay, so this
Yeah,
first
which is-
light is at the beginning of the calibration when you start turning on certain instruments. I was confused. I thought it was when you start the science period, right? So you work specifically on one instrument, right? How many instruments does the Webb have, more or less? The MIDI and what else?
So there are 4 science instruments on board, which are all packaged into that module that I mentioned on the back of the mirror. We have 3 science instruments in the near infrared. That's NIRCam, which is a huge camera. It's a beast, and it has some spectroscopy as well. Then we have an instrument called NIRSpec, which was actually an ESA-led instrument. This is kind of really the spectroscopic workhorse instrument in the near infrared. It has a bunch of different types of spectroscopy that it can do, all like really quite advanced. A lot of things that we haven't really been able to do from space before. So incredibly powerful instrument. We have NIRIS, which is a Canadian-led instrument. NIRIS so NIRIS is kind of has some imaging and spectroscopy on board, and is going to be used a lot for exoplanet observations. And then once we get to the mid-infrared, and by that we mean light that's kind of longer than 5 microns in wavelength, we have the one instrument MIRI. It has lots and lots of different functionality on board. So we have a huge team of experts on all the different aspects of the instruments. MIRI has, an imager. It can do coronagraphic imaging. So this is where we block out the light of a star to be able to really visualize what's around it, whether it's got, disks or planets around it. We have different types of spectroscopy, and including a spectroscopic mode that is like really specialized for doing time series observations of exoplanets, for example. So that's going to be quite a big part of what we do. We also have a very sophisticated spectrometer that is also kind of quite a unique capability that is going to give us an incredibly rich amount of data about all different kinds of astrophysical objects. So it's a very varied suite of instruments that can do, really can observe all kinds of different targets across the board in astrophysics. So that's from solar system objects and asteroids and to exoplanets around other stars in our galaxy to, all the way to the kind of most distant galaxies in the universe. And that's really kind of its big power, is that this huge versatility in the instruments.
So to temper my expectations, when do you expect to be able to take, a measurement of an exoplanet's atmosphere and actually sort of definitively say, do you know what, this looks like it contains this chemical, or this chemical, and then, maybe one day go, hang on a second, we've got a pretty convincing signature that there may be organic life on that planet. How long do you think that will take in James Webb's deployment?
I mean, basically, we have quite a few observations of exoplanet atmospheres planned for very early in the first cycle of observation. So as soon as we are kind of what we call ready for science, we can do those observations. Of course, these transiting exoplanet observations, where you really use spectroscopy to really be able to kind of probe into the chemistry of the atmospheres, these are incredibly challenging observations. And I actually spent quite a lot of time on the kind of the technical and operational aspects of doing these types of observations. You're not just talking about trying to measure signals at a few percent. You're really talking about very small fractions of a percent that you're trying to measure. And as you say, if you want to measure them definitively, you need extremely good sort of characterization of your signal and calibrations. So in terms of, amongst the exoplanet kind of zoo that we have, there are some that are easier to measure than others. So I'm sure that we will have, very early on in the first cycle, so after commissioning, we will have some measurements like that. Yes. the types of exoplanets that people find the most exciting or that are the most like compelling for being Earth-like, they tend to be like the really small planets, and so they tend to also be like the most challenging to get measurements of their atmospheres. So it's really hard to say when we're really going to get like, this is definitely a biosignature. This is definitely potentially life. There's a whole other field of science behind that as well, and that's really kind of understanding what would a sign of life really be. And I think that's something that we don't have a conclusive answer to either. So like, what molecule exactly would you look for, and what type of pattern exactly would you need to see? But Webb is going to deliver a huge amount of really amazing data on that, I think. For the first time, spectroscopically at a very large range of wavelengths, so really able to see molecular species that we've not really been able to access before with other telescopes or space missions. So I'm absolutely confident that we are going to make huge advances in that area. But that kind of holy grail question is a very, very challenging one, and I think that. That's going to take a lot of research still.
Yeah, I mean, aside from that holy grail question, which of course I guess is the thing that inflames the public imagination the most, as a scientist, is there sort of data that seems to be low-hanging fruit for the James Webb Telescope that you're pretty convinced you'll get back that is exciting in terms of the work of astronomers and astrobiologists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Is there some, it's such a groundbreaking telescope, there's nothing like it. Is there like almost like an immediate return from putting it up?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly in the field of exoplanets, like I said, Webb can cover kind of has wavelength coverage and instrument functionality on board that's really unique, and that's like very new kind of parameter space. And when you do that, and particularly in the mid-infrared, in fact, for MIRI, which I work on, mid-infrared is quite a challenging wavelength range. So that's almost impossible to do from the ground. And for MIRI, the real predecessor was the Spitzer Space Telescope, rather than Hubble, which never even approached the kinds of wavelengths that Spitzer and MIRI, that MIRI covers. But Spitzer was a tiny telescope. And so with the jump in size from Spitzer to a 6.5 meter Webb, with having that wavelength coverage, the jump in both the resolution and the detail that we're going to be able to see and the depth to which we can go is huge. And so we are, almost certainly that, some of the data that we get in the first few years will be really groundbreaking. Certainly in exoplanets, but also, for example, for Webb, the deep fields that will be taken quite early on. With the Hubble Space Telescope, the deep fields have been some of the most sort of groundbreaking and iconic images that were produced with the telescope. And we'll be doing similar observations with Webb like that.
I understand the Webb can see earlier into the universe, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the light from distant galaxies gets stretched to longer wavelengths due to the expansion of the universe, and that's what we call the redshift. So the light that stars in galaxies emit gets kind of more and more pushed into the infrared the further back into the history of the universe that we look, or the further away the galaxies are. And with the Hubble Space Telescope, we have really, that capability into the infrared has been pushed, but we've really kind of got to the limit of how far Hubble is like technically able to probe in back in time and in distance in the universe. And Webb is really picking up. And that was a big driver for having Webb as an infrared telescope, is that it's going to be able to probe further back and see even more distant galaxies. And this is a part of the history of the universe that, we kind of have all these models of how these galaxies, these very first generations of galaxies would have formed, what they might look like, but we really don't have a lot of information about them specifically. And so, this is exactly what kind of Webb was designed also to do. And so, we're almost certain to get like some fantastic data. And I'm also excited to see like the new things it's going to show us that, you know, we're going to look at it and go, this is unexpected. What is this? Yeah, absolutely. And as you know, as someone who's kind of on the instrument telescope building side of things in astronomy, you know, that's something that I find like absolutely fascinating. All the discoveries that were never expected. And the Hubble Deep Field is in that category as well. It showed a lot of very new things and created this whole new area of research, basically.
In the timeline that the James Webb will be able to observe, maybe ask Kai, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to see how to phrase this. What do we expect to see? What would be in what state would the universe be in that moment that we are looking at with the James Webb?
It's in a toddler to a baby stage, and the universe is about 14 billion years old, and Hubble was able to look back almost to 500 million years after the Big Bang, so about 1/30th of its present age. But Hubble, as Sarah explained pretty well, had its limits. So what Hubble basically showed us early on was the brightest things that were there, because the fainter things, or the whole picture of everything that was there, it could not see. It's almost like you're out on a summer night, you're looking at a swarm of fireflies and you see light dots, and only after you switch on Webb, you realize, oh, there's a firefly on the dot of light. And that's what we expect is going to happen, more or less. So Sarah said that there are models, there are assumptions on what happened in the early universe. When did the first galaxies form? When did the first clumps of primordial gas and clumps of dark matter collapse under their own weight and started to form stars out of the dense, cold gas that formed then? Which is a really important process, and that the theoreticians, the physicists, don't quite understand yet. So it's crucial to understand for our own origins, for the history of the universe, when the first galaxies, when the first stars in these galaxies turned on. And this is the age of the universe. This is this first era, ending the dark ages, the first light in the universe that Webb, we are pretty sure, will take us into.
So if I understood correctly, we're looking at that period where the first stars start igniting. Is that what I am?
Yes.
Yep.
I think it's one of the big hopes, but people are rather confident. Looking at the galaxies that Hubble saw, they are in the toddler stage, about 700 million years after the Big Bang. They already have relatively old stars. So we know that the stars must have formed a couple 100 million years earlier, maybe already 200 million years after the Big Bang, which is interesting because the universe was originally rather even. And only the tiny inequalities in density made the matter clump and form structure. And this must have happened really easily, really quickly to allow the early formation of galaxies. So people are rather thrilled to find out when and how the first galaxies and the first stars in them turned on. Another thing are, of course, black holes. We also have no idea at this point when the black holes, and they are really important parts of the universe. Every big galaxy has a major black hole at its center. We do not know yet how the seed black holes, the first black holes, were accreting the matter, how they started out. These are all hints that Webb will be able to give us in the early universe. So really it is a journey back to the origins, where Webb has basically shown us a glimpse of what's behind the curtain of its own abilities. And we think Webb will be able to open that curtain for us and open the young universe and give us a comprehensive view of how the world started.
Could you is there an analogy between like the James Webb and looking into the kind of vastness of space and the hugeness of it all, and say something like the Large Hadron Collider looking at the very tiny, and really the information that you're getting from both actually kind of helps you I guess solve some of the physics questions that people have been pondering for the last 50 years. Are instruments like this just really important for the physicists, therefore, to try and work out what the hell is going on? Because we seem to have been like almost like stalled for a while. Is James Webb part of that picture?
Yes. Webb, a quick answer, and I'm sure Sarah has a lot more to say about this. But very briefly, I mean, when we look at the largest structure and what's happening, we're always looking at the fundamentals of physics, and be it dark energy, but also from the formation of structure in the early universe. and from other constraints that are not specifically Webb constraints. The cosmic microwave background, that is the state of the universe 300,000 years after the Big Bang, tells us a lot about the fabric of the universe on small scales, what particles it must have had, and on very large scales, things like dark energy, things like gravity are being measured by, and their actions are measured by telescopes in part Webb on smaller scales, because it drills deep and small fields very deep, and by other telescopes like the upcoming Euclid and the Nancy Grace Roman telescope that will map large parts of the universe and see the overall picture on how things move and how things moved over time.
Yeah, very much what Kai was saying, really. I would definitely say Webb and the Large Hadron Collider fall into these sorts of huge imagination machines, that just have a huge scientific, but also sort of like inspirational value. I mean, there are these big fundamental open questions in the universe, which is things like the nature of dark matter and the nature of dark energy, which we've really, particularly with dark energy, we've really only scratched the surface of what is going on with that. And yeah, as Kai referred to these other missions, and I think that's sort of correct. In more on the Astro side, we have a range of different projects and missions, like Euclid, like the Roman telescope, like the Square Kilometre Array, like the microwave background projects. I think at this point we really sort of don't know whether the real kind of crux of the answer is more on the kind of particle physics side or on the astrophysics side. So it's an area of research, I think, where these fields work together or have to work together very closely, because the answer could come from lots of different directions. So we have people who work in these kinds of real in the cosmology theory, the astroparticle physicists. That's really kind of the bread and butter of their science, and an area where we really have to work very closely together with our kind of fundamental physics colleagues as well.
Now, I have to be the bad guy always here, Matt, because we have a certain time constraints. First, I would like to invite Elsa Montagnon to join the stage, the virtual stage that we have here today as our next guest. I also have a questions for Sarah, because when I was preparing this session, I read that you are working on science operations. And I was wondering, concretely, what is science operations? What can you tell us about that?
So that covers science operations for a mission like Webb. Covers a big range of different things, really. So on our immediate horizon is, of course, the launch and the whole commissioning period. And so and that is something that's been a big focus of our work in the past several years now, really, where we really define these initial measurements that we need to take to really kind of make sure that we are ready for science and that the instrument works well. So we have to say, okay, to test this one aspect of the instrument, we need to look at this kind of star, do this kind of measurement, and then analyze it in this way. So it's really sort of quite a carefully planned out process. So that will take up several months after launch. Once we go into the routine operations, kind of where we are performing Webb is performing observations for astronomers from around the world. The science operations is really kind of, again, monitoring the health of the instrument and making sure that the data remain of excellent quality. So it involves some monitoring data quality, doing more calibration types of work. It also involves supporting the users of Webb, so making sure that they get their data in the right form, they're able to access it, they understand what to do. So there's an aspect of kind of the user support in there as well, and also continuing to kind of push forward with what we can do with Webb. It's okay, if we, for different kinds of science, or we see to do this particular type of observation, it would be better to do our detector readouts in a slightly different way. So let's see if we can make that happen. it's a hugely varied job, and it's one of the reasons that I really enjoy it as well, because it kind of touches on lots of different aspects of the mission.
Yeah, it does sound very cool. Very cool indeed.
My hat definitely goes off to my colleagues doing that. It is a monumental task getting all of that organized.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know, Matt, if you have any closing questions.
Well, no, I maybe just will only take one sentence. Is if the Large Hadron Collider had the Higgs boson, what is the Higgs boson equivalent for James Webb? For Sarah.
That's a very good question.
Or is that too? Or doesn't it have one? Doesn't it have a Higgs boson?
Life in other planets.
I mean, I think the long answer is like there is like a fundamental difference between why the LHC was built and why Webb was built. So that's the kind, we can go into all the kinds of details of that. I would say it's maybe not a single Higgs boson, but I think there is a short list of things, and that would be things like the very first generation of galaxies in the early universe, and kind of biosignatures in exoplanet atmospheres. I would put on that list as well.
Fab.
The Interplanetary Podcast is alive!
There we go, Julio. By the time we got to the final part of that day, I was very tired.
Well, let's just say that I fell asleep really quickly that evening because I had spent also the night before bringing all my equipment to this special room where we recorded, then dismantling everything, taking it home, and I fell asleep super quickly, and I was exhausted, but totally worth it. Yeah, it's this thing with the ESA Open Day. Those that work on it, we are all volunteers. It's not, it's a weekend. We do it during the weekend, but these people working at ESA and, the other organizations that join us for this event, we are so passionate and motivated by what we do that, yes, let's also, the moment we can do a little bit more outreach and showing the community what we do, let's go for it, even if it takes a weekend.
Yeah, well done, ESA, because open days are absolutely genius, and ESA itself is absolutely awesome. This just goes to show what people can do together, don't you think? It's started sounding like Alan Partridge, but I actually meant it.
Yeah, but that is the whole point of ESA, right? The whole point of ESA is doing these projects that not one country can do on its own, and that's where we have Ariane. That's where we have all these incredible scientific missions like JUICE that we will launch on an Ariane 5, I think, next year. Don't quote me on that. I really don't remember if it's next year or when. But mission to Jupiter moons.
Yep.
What else can you want?
If you want to listen to more of Kate Underhill, by the way, it's episode 196.
Indeed.
You should definitely listen to episode 218 at some point this week.
Why is that?
Because Matthias Maurer is the guest on that one, and
who is Matthias Maurer?
He is ESA's astronaut, German, who's going up to the ISS next week, hopefully on SpaceX Crew 3.
Yeah, that is the launch to watch this weekend. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
VA 255 was last weekend. Now we have Matthias next weekend. Remember back when weekends were nice and relaxing, and you're not biting your nails on a rocket launch.
No, you've got another one. This is super stressful. So yeah, this is Raja Chari, Thomas Marshburn, Kayla Barron, and Matthias Maurer going up on SpaceX 3, docking at Harmony Port.
You keep saying Matthias. Say Matthias. I say Matthias.
It is Matthias.
You say tomato. I say tomato.
It's. Do you know why I keep saying Matthias? Because there used to be a famous tennis player called Matthias, but I think it might have been his surname, or maybe a football player. Is it a football? I can't remember.
I have no idea.
I can't remember.
But Matthias, yeah. Well, I mean, he is the astronaut I had the chance to work closest to within ESA. We went together to Kourou for one trip. and the fact that he spent time in Argentina, I feel very connected with him, and this is the launch of a European astronaut that I think I'm the most excited about. So I'm looking forward to that one. Obviously, I have nothing to do with this launch that's coming. It's it's a NASA launch on a SpaceX Falcon rocket, but it's just always incredible to watch someone go to space.
Yeah, Matthias is definitely one of the nicest people I've ever met, and what he's really inspirational. Genuinely, I came away from our chat so happy. It's definitely worth listening to that podcast again.
So down to earth, humble.
What a legend!
He's going to the International Space Station for what, half a year? I don't know the length of his mission, but half a year, let's say.
And he's bound to do something really cool as well, because he's proper brainy as well. He's proper good on material sciences.
I would argue that all ESA astronauts are brainy.
Yeah, but not everyone going into space recently.
I would even go to that all modern astronauts that at least are hired by a space agency are brainy. We're not any longer in the right stuff days.
No, true.
There was more how well you could pilot a test jet, a jet plane. So if you're an astronaut today, let's say going on these professional flights, you have to be good in academic aspects as well, right?
Yeah, but Tim Peake can fly he's a pretty decent pilot, I've heard. He's a test pilot. He can't be bad. Julio, what are you doing for the rest of the week? Are you having a nice week this week, a non-stressful week?
I hope it's a quiet week, but we are just Monday. This is Monday. Who knows what surprises we will get. I hope to get a little bit more insight on what's going on in the clean room for James Webb. Not being in Kourou, it's not like I can just pop by and have a look, but I love to hear more on what's going on there. Preparations are ongoing for a few more launches. Before the Ariane 5 launch, I think there should be at least a Vega launch. And I think, let me double check, but I think we also have an upcoming launch for Soyuz, which, by the way, another thing that happened this last week, it's an anniversary of Soyuz launching from Kourou, from the spaceport. 10 years since that project started, the launch 10 years ago with Galileo satellites. By the way, and by the way, the first Galileo satellites going to space, the first proper ones, not there were some demonstration missions before that, but the first proper ones 10 years ago. Anyway, Matt, how about your week? Tell me.
Well, yeah, I've got a reasonably easy week this week because I've taken a week off work, but it's going to be full on. I've got so much stuff to do, Julio. Life catching up on stuff.
Sometimes you cannot keep up with everything, and it's okay. No, exactly. It's okay to choose priorities, right?
Exactly. Exactamo.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Is that it? Shall we say goodbye to this podcast?
No.
Should we just keep on going forever?
We just keep on going, yes.
No, I refuse. Bye, podcast.
Ciao, ciao.